Childhood trauma, I think it's such an important issue to talk about that. And I think trauma comes, there's like a spectrum of it. There is the obvious, image that we have of like, you know, you see a kid and they might have a bruise on their face, or they might have a bruise on their arm or something like that. And I think there's a lot of physical abuse type trauma going on, but I think what we see more so, I think in the world, a lot of the people out here, and I think this is my experience too, along with a lot of other people, is that it's more psychological based than physical based, the trauma. There is physical trauma though, and there's a lot of it. And that's why you have all sorts of government programs and different groups trying to help children that are in these conditions. Also, it's not necessarily abuse, but some kids are just in just crazy amounts of poverty, and I guess you can say that that's the society abusing the children in some way. So we have this image here of this creature, and there's a little baby on the ground, and these people look like they're there to help the child, or maybe not, we're not sure. And we're not sure if this creature is benevolent or evil or neutral. We don't know. It's like this animal, kind of a half animal, half humanoid kind of a thing. So we don't know what it is. And I think it kind of shows you the relationship between the unknowns, the dangers, the dark elements of life, and what guardians and parents and society need to be doing to ensure that this child, who by the way in this picture is completely naked, completely vulnerable to the environment. And that's so true, right? I mean, a child is, they're completely helpless. We're probably one of the most helpless species on the planet when it comes to just when we're born. It takes for a really long time for a child to mature into some level of capability. So abuse comes in many different forms. There's like the classic physical abuse, being hit, slapped, choked, who knows what. Children have been abused in so many different ways. It's pretty sad and scary what people go through all the time. And by the way, if you're watching this video and you are being abused, get help. Don't listen to anybody. Go get help. Call 911. Do whatever it takes to get help from. Our government is not perfect. Our society is not perfect. Other adults aren't perfect, but try to go get help. Seek help. Okay? There's systems put in place in this world. They're not perfect, like I said, but you're probably better off in a better situation if you ask for help. When in doubt, ask for help. So we have physical abuse. We have emotional abuse. And we're just going to cover this just on a surface level a little bit, and then we'll get a little bit deeper into some of the aspects. And this is sexual abuse. And I think there's a lot of sexual abuse out there. And I think sexual abuse, especially for children, kind of sets them up either to be shut down towards sex in their adult life, or to become hypersexualized, which is its own problem. It becomes like a preoccupation and an addiction for some people. Not all people, but some people. Neglect. I think this is a big one. At least I know from my life, neglect. I always had physical things, but psychologically, I went through a childhood that was just like neglected. And I think part of it is cultural. It's just sort of in my culture, I'm Armenian, and I grew up in the United States. They just kind of ignore the spiritual and psychic and emotional, you know, characteristics or properties of what we are as beings. Kind of sad. And then we have also childhood or household dysfunctions. And look, the bottom line of it is, when you have the household, the household is definitely going to be dysfunctional if you're going to have these other types of abuse. But sometimes the problem is coming not because the parents are necessarily emotionally super abusive or physically abusive or doing any of these other type of abuses, but that there's just this chaos going on within the family system. And this actually is actually a big problem, because this is like the whole kind of environment. And when the environment is sick like this, there's, the parents are fighting, there's mental illness. Like the mother or father, let's say it's a single mother. I try to I have a good friend that had this problem. The mom had mental illness. She was not a bad person, but I mean, maybe she is a bad person. I don't know, but I think the mental illness, overrules, creates lots of problems. Incarcerated relatives. Father could go to jail and the kids can get all twisted up about what it means to be a man. Because some cultures have a culture of incarceration, substance abuse, divorce. There could also be things where the family is going through financial problems and they keep it away from the kids and they start acting weird. There's all sorts of things people do. I think this is where religion and spirituality come in, because, people as families and individuals, we may not be schooled in psychology and abuse and neglect and all the different things that go along to make a person successful, healthy, functioning, whatever. But I think the religious institutions or society needs to be there to support us in that process, to educate us, to guide us. So what happens is, when someone is abused, their brain development is different. Parts of the brain become activated, parts of the brain become shut down. It just throws the actual structure, the machinery, out of alignment. Okay? So whenever, like, for example, you get triggered, your brain just shuts down. And all of a sudden, you got this reptilian part of the brain, this mammalian part of the brain, this tribal, instinctual part of the brain gets activated, and this part, for the most part, shuts down. Okay? This could shut down too, and you just become like this. I mean, I think a lot of people that are hooked on drugs, they're kind of functioning at these lower levels. Their mind isn't really under their control. There's this thing called somatic experiencing, and what happens is the trauma is right here. And this is the sympathetic, this is where you're active, this is where you relax, and this is normal right here. And when there's a traumatic event, people get stuck on the fight-flight kind of a system, or they get into this kind of hyper-relaxation, right? And usually what happens is they get stuck here and they get burnt out, and so they come down here. Or some people, they just naturally will go into turtle mode and just withdraw. And, the symptoms are depression, flat affect, lethargy, deadness, numbness, low blood pressure, poor digestion. You could read it yourself right here. And the symptoms of hyperactivity, anxiety, panic, hyperactivity, inability to relax, restlessness, and on and on. Okay, sleeplessness. So, by the way, if you see your child going from here to one of these type of situations, you have to pay attention and you have to communicate and understand what's going on. Maybe someone is abusing them. Maybe something happened to them. Maybe it's as simple as they just saw a movie and they took it as a trauma, and all they need is a little bit of communication. See, I think sometimes we take on traumas and these imprints, and that nobody's actually abusing you. I mean, I guess you could say if there's some kind of a scary movie or some kind of troubling movie, maybe it's the culture you could blame. But there's going to be always weird things in every culture. You can't get rid of that. Okay? Especially a culture like ours, where anything kind of goes. So there's all sorts of stuff out there. Now, part of what's happening as we grow up in life, this is Erickson's stages of psychosocial development, is we're going to forget about this part right here, even though as we get older, the things that happen to us at a young age affect us. But what's happening at a very young age is you're either learning trust or mistrust. Can I trust the people around me, or do I need to intrinsically have a mistrust of the people around me so I can survive? Okay, and there's cases like this where I've heard where parents would very brutally abuse their children in all sorts of bizarre ways. I think a lot of that's just mental illness. It's really sad, those type of cases, because I think what happens is when people are abused, fundamentally what happens is the being starts to disconnect from the environment, starts to not communicate properly with the environment, and then or with the body, so they become just like very in the mind, or when that becomes too dangerous, they shatter and become many different personalities. There's personality disorders that form where there's multiple personalities. So the child, when they get to like 18 months to 3 months, they want to get a sense of autonomy. Can I explore the world? Then when you explore the world, if the parents are creating, shame and doubt in you, what happens there? See, I think parents need to get educated on these kind of, processes that the child is going to be going through. From 3 to 5, the child is starting to get a sense of like independence, initiative, like, hey, I want to go do this. I want to go have a hangout with my friend. Or are they going to get into this, again, this kind of shame, kind of guilt type state where they're not going to be able to have a sense of, hey, I want to create this thing. Okay? From 5 to 13, they're going to get into being industrious, or are they going to be getting a sense of inferiority, that they're not good enough, they can't do it? Because sometimes, you want to create something as a child, but you don't have all the know-how, you don't have all the pieces. And if you're failing and you're getting piled on because of, negative people in the environment, maybe a parent that you look up to, they might put you down, you're not going to be able to maximize your industrialness or industry. And then from 13 to 21, you're getting a sense of identity. Like, who am I? What am I about? Am I a vegan, or am I not that thing? Am I an athlete, or am I not an athlete? Am I an artist? Am I, am I good with, the opposite sex? Am I not? So all these different ideas create our identity, or are we going to get into the state where we're just confused about who we are, what we stand for, what our values are, right? So these are really important kind of periods in young people that are developing. And so when there's trauma and abuse, it shows up in different ways, on a cognitive level, physical health level, emotional level, relationship level, mental health level, behavior level, brain development level. You can freeze this and look at this, but let's look at just cognition, impaired readiness to learn. That's that kid in class that maybe having a hard time. They might be brilliant, but they have stuff going on and it's making them, having a hard time to learn. Difficulty problem solving, language delays, problems with concentration, poor academic achievement. Maybe there's nobody paying attention to their academic, development, or someone is putting them down in some way. Let's look at on a physiological level, or physical level. Sleep disorders, eating disorders, poor immune system function, cardiovascular disease, shorter lifespan. I mean, this is what happens to people. There was a study done where kids that had better, the parents had training, and when the kids became adults, the blood tests were done, and they found out that the ones that had better parenting as adults had less inflammation in their body. Okay, so these are common traumas that people experience as they get, once they're traumatized and they get older, they they have these as problems. Inner child traumas, guilt traumas, neglect traumas, and confidence trauma. So confidence trauma, I got a sense about that. Neglect trauma, guilt trauma, right? Well, let's look at this. I'm not as familiar with this. Inner child trauma, feels bumped. I'm not sure what that means. Lives with persistent fear, hates being lonely, forms interdependent relationships, usually attracts emotionally unavailable people. So yeah, I mean, essentially, you're not functioning properly because of these traumas. Okay, so let's get comfort zone. So what happens is when you get into a trauma type orientation, you're going to stay in the comfort zone, you're going to stay in the fear zone, and you're going to stay away from this learning. You're going to stay away from these areas that are risky. There's chaos, there's pain, there's discomfort, there's you're going to have to make commitments. Growth is not easy. Learning is not easy. And sometimes learning isn't like reading a book. Sometimes it's being open to learn from a person, like maybe in a relationship. I know I've learned a lot in my relationships, and so sometimes it's something like that where you're learning from a person as opposed to just being in your own reality. And I think fundamentally what children need the most is a sense of someone attuning to them. It's just really that simple. What does that mean? Good attunement requires being able to read, see, and stay present to the people, even in hard conversations. Now, with children, you're generally not going to have a hard conversation. But, coming down to their level, respecting them as individuals and not just some kind of treating them like a pet or something. That's what a lot of parents do. Like they're not people. They're just like these, almost like an animal or something, I've seen that where the kids are not treated like they're going to ever become an adult, They get mistreated so badly sometimes. Recognize the signs and symptoms of abandonment wounds. Let's look at this for a second. Fear of abandonment or rejection. So as an adult, if you're experiencing these things, it's kind of a problem. Let me see if I can just pull this in. Hang on a second. I think we can. No, I think it's going to be a problem. Okay. Anyway, insecurity and low self-esteem, neediness and clinginess, self-absorbing behavior, difficulty maintaining relationships, chronic feelings of loneliness and isolation, identifying the root cause. Here we go. Parental neglect or abuse, loss of a loved one, frequent moves or changes in caregivers, bullying and ostracization. So these are, sometimes it's not abuse, but the conditions create a traumatic environment. But look, fundamentally, what it comes down to, if you're going to heal and become an adult, it kind of gets into it right here. allowing yourself to feel your emotions, very important, because you have to feel what you're dealing with. Sometimes your emotions are right on, sometimes they're not. And that's where having a therapist or someone you can trust to talk through some of these things and get some insight. Because if you're a normal person, you're going to have an easy time reading your emotions. But if you've been abused, neglected, traumatized, basically driven insane in some ways, what happens is you can't really trust your feelings all the time. So you need to seek professional help sometimes. Um, Build a strong support system. This has to do with friendship, relationships, and the therapist too. It's like you need to have systems. And this is just a general thing in life. Like you don't want to have one stream of income. You want to have many streams of income. You don't want to have one friend. You want to have a few friends. You want to, not be used to just living in one type of environment, but maybe moving around so you have different experiences. So you want to have many different venues or avenues, so you have a sense of support. Okay, let me see what else there's. Practice. Yeah. So anyway, we'll stop there. A lot of these things keep going on in different ways, but we'll just stop there, and I'll make some more videos on this subject.